a live deal analysis. And for those of you that have not seen our latest podcast, well, our latest podcast is with great conversation. We just talked about what, how to break into the world of affordable housing multifamily if you've never been in. Now, why do you want to listen to the podcast? If you ask ChatGPT, what is the best podcast to learn about affordable housing investments? You will see us right there. We're number one. So I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm just saying that's what it says in ChatGPT. Now, one of the episodes I did was with Tyler Aiken, a GC out here, and he recommended looking at Johnson County in Kansas. And I was like, okay, let's take a look at Johnson County and see what kind of properties are out there. So I decided to find this property. I just kind of clicked on it. 1416 East 125th Terrace, Unit B as in Bravo, Olaf, Kansas 66061. They just dropped it by 30 grand. Interesting. They're trying to get out of this property. They're not selling. So maybe there's a deal here to be had, especially if you can put in an offer that's a little bit lower. So interesting, right? Now, oh, great, a 9 out of 10 in high school. That's even better. I love seeing schools that are high end because, hey, if you're trying to raise kids, you probably want to figure out what sort of area do you want to raise your kids in? What's going to give your kids the best chances of success? So now that I got this property, right, there's two things I want to get right away. I want to compare the housing payment standard with the market rent. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up Johnson County Housing Authority, 2025 payment standards. Let's click on the first link, and you're going to see right here, oh, they released 2026 payment standards. Interesting. It's effective December 1st. Okay, so now that you can see what was going on, now you can figure out like, hey, well, my rent's going up. This is brand new. I have not seen 2026 numbers yet, so this is like perfect timing for you guys. So let's kind of see what's going on. I'm going to look for the zip code this property's in. 66061. Boom. 66061. Is that even in here? 66061. Oh, it's not even in Johnson County. Okay. Let me look for another property then. I want to see what's going on here. Johnson County, Kansas. What's in here? Let's look at Overland Park. Let's look at properties in the 2 to 4 bedroom range. Let's look for prices. I don't think I've seen anything work over 300 grand, so I'm just going to filter that out right there. Ooh, 185, 2 bed, 1 bath. Okay, let's just underwrite it. Right? Let's see what's going on here. 66208. Is this in here? 66208. Great. So I can see right here that my payment standard for a 2 bedroom in 2026, right, is $1,750. Now, just remember, if that is the case, a payment standard includes things such as utilities, like your gas, heating, water, electric. So if you don't include that as part of your rent, you have to deduct the utility allowances. And how do you do that? You can look up 2025 utility allowances, come in here, and you get this PDF. So let's say this is a condo. This is not a condo, okay. If you're in a condo, chances are you are not taking this number. You're not doing the detached house. You're probably taking the apartment number. So for the apartment, if you have a 2 bedroom property and your property uses natural gas for heating and you don't provide gas, you have to deduct $27 from the payment standard to get your maximum rent. All right, that's what your maximum rent is. Now, that doesn't mean that it's reasonable. And here's what I mean. If you look up the market rent by going to affordablehousing.com, going to the owner section, going to the rental estimate, now you can plug in your address right here, 5163 West 75th Street. Plug in your address, plug in your bedroom count. Now you're going to see what the market rent looks like in this area. And you see that right here, it says that the average rent for 12 units that are 2 bedrooms within a 0.78 mile radius is $1,513. Now, because $1,513 is lower than $1,750, I would automatically just assume that this is my highest rent, right? Even our rent housing market. And that's because of the rent reasonableness test. The rent reasonableness test, just so you can understand language, right? The housing authority must ensure the rents charged by landlords to Housing Choice Voucher, which is previously known as Section 8, families are reasonable. That means they compare the proposed rent for a voucher unit to the rent for a similar non-subsidized unit. So this means that you can't charge more to someone simply because they are a voucher holder, right? So a lot of gurus will teach you that, oh, look at the FMR, that's the rent you're gonna get, and that's automatic rent you're gonna get, and deduct that by your mortgage, and that's your cash flow. That could not be further from the truth. You have to make sure that you understand the rent reasonably, especially when it comes to investing in Section 8 properties. All right, now that you've understood the rent reasonable test, you understand why we want to use 1513 as the rent estimate for this property specifically. Okay. All right, now that we got this place in play, let's start plugging in some numbers. Now, this property at 5163 West 75th Street is listed for 185 grand. So, again, if you want to follow along this analysis, just go to affordablehousing.io, not .com, and then go to the Get Deal Analysis tool right here, and you can get a copy of the spreadsheet to follow along and do this along with me. That's the fastest way you get a copy of the spreadsheet. Now, when I look at this property, 950 square feet, I think this property is in like relatively good shape. I don't think I really need to do much, to be honest with you. Right? Unless there's something I can't see superficially from the property. I mean, the bathroom looks fine. This looks pretty turnkey to me. So for me, I don't even think I need to repaint the entire house. Oh, what happened here? Whoa. Okay. Let me reopen my spreadsheet here. Whoa. This is so weird. I've never seen my spreadsheet do this before. This is interesting. All right, let me go and try to open up another spreadsheet. What? I've never had this happen before. Okay, I'm gonna restart everything. 1 second. What? This is so weird. I've never had this glitch before. Is this doing the same thing? Maybe, hopefully, I just restart it. Okay. Maybe that's a recovered file. Let's see. What? Maybe I need to update my Excel? Wow, I've never had that happen before. Let me quit Excel and reopen it. Well, that fixed it. All right, let's do this again. All right, so just had to quit Excel and redo it. So just find a spreadsheet. Let's go here, $185,000 for my rehab calculator because it's relatively turnkey and my HOA covers my roof. I'm gonna zero out here in G6, no repairs to roof. I have no landscaping because that's covered by the HOA here. Usually I have that for single family purchase. This is a condo, so that's not included. Now for painting, I'm gonna set aside, I'm gonna assume that I need to do touch-up paint on half the house just to make it look nice. So I'd equals 950, the total square feet, divided by 2, $3 a square foot. That's all I need to do for this property. I don't see anything else I really need to do here. Maybe I'll replace one of the toilets with a high pressure flush toilet. I've never had a clogged toilet call ever since I installed those pressure assisted toilets. So I'm also get this done now because a lot of people underestimate when you get a clogged toilet call, you're going to spend $100, $200 getting a plumber out there on an emergency, especially you only have one toilet, you have no choice. And then what happens? You spend that $200 maybe replacing the toilet, and now you're already out $400. And all the time and wasted energy of replacing that toilet, that's not worth it at all. So that's why I'd rather just get as much work done upfront as possible so it reduces the amount of time and maintenance that I have to dedicate to this. So I'm assuming I got $2,250 of rehab on this property, right? Very little. Now my rent, again, we talked about 1515 for the rent earlier, or 1513, excuse me, 1513. So I'll use that number right here for my rent in B16. Now for my taxes and my insurance, let's get that from my payment calculator right here. 130 bucks for taxes, 130, and then $120 for my insurance, 120 for my insurance. And I'm going to do equals 120 times 1.2 because I'm adding a 20% premium because I'm assuming that the insurance company is going to view this asset as a riskier asset. And that's because it's an investment property, not a primary residence property. So multiply that by 1.2. That gives me a total expense of 144. Then from HOA is 335. That is pricey, right? That's expensive. But because my HOA is so high, I'm going to lower my monthly maintenance to 5%. And that's because this HOA probably includes maintenance for landscaping, snow removal, roof repairs, hopefully some common area maintenance like the siding and stuff like that. So that's all included. That's why I want to include, that's why I want to lower my maintenance, because for a single family home, I'm usually setting aside 10% of my rent every single month for maintenance. Because I know at some point something's going to break, right? That's why I'm setting aside. From HOA, I got 335 bucks. It is what it is. For property management expenses, I got 10%. And then for my vacancy, I got 5%. All right. So if I buy this property, let's say for 25% down here in F19, my down payment is going to equal to my down payment times my listing price, which equals to $46,000. I don't have any commissions here because I'm not buying a wholesale property. I got 2.5% for closing costs. I'll probably bump to 3.5 just to kind of keep things relatively simple. Boom, boom, 0.035, $6,500 for origination fees, etc. 2250, boom. At 7.5%, let's say my interest rate right now is up 7% for an investment property. Great. $2,033 a month. Not a deal. Oh, here we go. My finance amount is going to be equal to B4 minus my down payment percentage right here. And that's going to be $138,750 that's I'm borrowing. So this gives me a total number of, roughly speaking, 185 grand. And that's going to allow me to cash flow negative, right? If I rent this property out, everything as like we talked about before. This for 1513, I will cash flow negative after my expenses, $322 a month. So I'd be losing $322 a month. So is that a deal? Probably not for me, unless you think this is an area that appreciates a lot. I mean, that's what is not investment wise. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just simply showing you how to pull the levers to make something a deal. So when you have your cash and cash this way, right? You have, let's call it 185 grand with a $25 rehab, just rounding here, 25% down, 7% interest rate. That's a negative 7%. But some people might buy a $1 million property, Southern California example, and they're like, hey, I'm not going to make any cash flow, but I know that if I buy a $1 million property and it goes up by 5% every single year, then boom, I'm making $50,000 a year. Who cares about 300 bucks of cash flow a month, right? That's their mantra. That is their way of generating assets, of generating net worth. So completely different strategy. This is why it's all completely up to you, for you to decide what makes sense for you. All right. So the next step here. We're going to have us play around with the levers. So let's say your cash and cash return number in E9, you want it to be 8%. What do you have to lower your purchase price by in order for you to achieve the 8% return. You might have to go to 195. Boom. You might have to go to 85. So for you to achieve an 8% return, assuming all the numbers are the same thing with a $1,500 $1,500 monthly rent, that's how you can cash flow $177 a month for 8% return, assuming you buy this property for 85 grand. Now, is that realistic? No, I don't think so. But at least now you know what a deal looks like, right? Now let's do one more exercise. Let's say your interest rate goes down to 6% for your rental property. See how your cash on cash return number jumped up? So now all of a sudden you might be willing to pay 90 grand for this deal. And that can really happen overnight. 92, boom, 93. Just mess around here. So instead of 83 grand, because your interest rate dropped a full point from 7 to 6%, assuming everything else stays constant, with a $25 rehab, 25% down, 2% rehab, 13 of rent. And that allows you to get to a cash flow of $183 a month for a 7.7% return, which rounds up to 8. You might say, okay, that's good for my portfolio. But here's what you got to understand and why you got to pay attention to what's happening in the world. Not looking at headline news, not looking at what's happening. If you look at the spread right now, right? 30-year mortgage rates affected by two factors. One is the interest rate on the 10-year yield. So the bond trader is actually much further ahead. If the bond traders expect that interest rates are going to go down, guess what? Guess what? It's going to be lower before the Federal Reserve even cuts rates, because the anticipation of what's going to happen drives your interest rates, not the headline news. Secondarily, the spread between the 10-year yield historically has been about 1.5 to 2%. And you look at the spread right now, it's roughly about 2.2-ish. So it's almost there, right? I think the spread in the last year is one as high as 3%, which is, the last 2 years, one as 3%, that's when interest rates like skyrocketing. Well, on top of that, what else happens? When it skyrockets because of uncertainty, risk, but you might have certain tariff deals get done. You might have better predictability of what the Federal Reserve is going to go. So that drives your interest rates and your spread, drive interest rates lower and the spread to become narrower. And that's what drives your interest rates down. All right. So all these factors matter, but it can literally happen overnight. Because if you follow what's happening in the 10-year yield, right? Let's go to the 10-year yield. Let's see what's happening here. If you look at the 10-year yield, you're going to see that it dropped almost from 4.8-ish at its peak in the last 12 months to 3.99. I mean, that's like a 0.8. That's a lot. That's a big move right there. So pay attention to what's going on. Don't read the headline news. Focus on the numbers, and you will determine based on your own leverage what you're willing to pay for a deal that's quote unquote a deal for you, right? Because you might say, hey, I'm gonna look at I'm gonna have an inspection, and then all of a sudden, boom, I found that the roof, or there's a special assessment for the roof that's gonna tank. Now all of a sudden it goes up by 10 grand, and now all of a sudden, boom, 103. Now it add 10 grand to my rehab. Now all of a sudden I can't afford to pay as much. I have to go down from 93 to $83,000 because my rehab jumped up by 10 grand. When that happens, right? Don't panic. Just put in the new problem that you're facing, assign a number to that problem, and determine whether or not that problem, with its new value assigned to it, still meets your criteria. And that's how you underwrite. That's how you analyze and learn how to pull all the different levers appropriately. All right. So hopefully this was helpful, everybody. My goal is this. I hope you analyze the same deal I analyzed today, right? This property right here, it's right on Redfin. I didn't make this up. I just kind of pulled it. I just did the scan. And on top of that, the 2026 payment standards is out for Johnson County. And even if you don't have a contractor out there, I just showed you literally. If you need a GC in Kansas City, call Tyler. At least now you know who to get your first bid from so that you feel a little bit less afraid of going out there, getting the question, and getting the bids for the deal that you're looking at specifically. Now, don't waste people's time. This is why I suggest learning how to underwrite. Because if you learn how to analyze a deal, you will figure out whether or not that deal is a deal for you. Because at some point, someone's gonna ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can say this is a deal because I have been going live for the past 756 days in a row. And I've been analyzing properties for the first like 400 days in a row, nonstop. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. Hope you all have an amazing Friday. Have an amazing weekend, everybody. Hope you spend some quality time with your family and friends today because that's what life is all about. I'll see you tomorrow for day 750.